Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Shifman, the President and CEO of the Vaughan Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us today for we're doing another segment of our virtual town hall series. Very pleased we're joined by several of our friends from different levels of government. Shortly, we'll have Honorable Mary Ying, the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade joining us. So we're going to welcome her. We have MPP Stan Cho, Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Finance from the Provincial Government. Thanks for joining us. And our regular guest and longtime friend, Honorable Mayor Maurizio Bevilacqua, the Mayor of the City of Vaughan. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
So, good morning. So just some opening remarks, and we expect to be joined by Minister Ying shortly. We, first of all, if there was a theme throughout COVID for the Vaughan Chamber and its members and the business community, early on, we were hearing loud and clear there were issues of liquidity, cash flow crunch. If we fast forward a little bit, and throughout always the uncertainty that businesses were facing, so we had cash flow crunch first. Then there was a lot of concern about rental assistance, and we saw some support there. There were obviously discussions with employment lawyers. We've also had accountants and employment lawyers on our segments talking about how to access certain funds like the wage subsidy. More recently, the concern has turned to how do I look to reopen my business? We are seeing the economy slowly open back up, and we want to do that in a safe and responsible manner while following guidelines. And there's some confusion as to how do I do that responsibly, so we're going to get into that today. At the Vaughan Chamber, we're being your voice with all levels of government. We've spoken to over 500 of our members directly. We've voiced those comments and concerns to government. We appreciate the changes that have been made, some of them through the Chamber Network's voice and our partners. You know that we've started a Facebook marketplace for business to be able to sell during this. There's, I believe, almost 200 people using that now, so I'd encourage you to use that. That's free. We've started to do networking sessions online again. There seems to be a strong demand for that. We have another one Friday. They've both filled up the previous two we did, so you can join us. And on our website, you can find business resources from accountants and lawyers, as well as all the government supports provided. That's just on our website. You go to the home page, says COVID-19 Business Resources. Click through that. It'll take you to that other page. You can obviously join our newsletter as well if that helps you stay connected with us. So while we're waiting for Minister Ying, I know there's a cabinet meeting. I'm going to go to MPP Stan Cho, again, Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Finance, and my old friend from high school. So first, let me say hi to you. And I wanted to give you a couple minutes just to talk about what the provincial government is doing right now to support business. And then depending on our time frame, I'll have some questions for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. And it is great to see you. It's been a while since York Mills Collegiate, of course, but Brian is an old friend. And I want to thank you, the mayor as well, of course, for being here this morning. And for all of you who are tuning in. This is certainly extraordinary times, and there's been a lot of uncertainty out there. And so today I'm hoping to clear some of that uncertainty from the provincial level as we start to look towards our sunnier days. But before I get there, I want to just let everyone know how personally this pandemic has hit me. I grew up with modest roots. My parents moved here 50 years ago from South Korea with little more than the clothes on their back. And it was small business that really led to the opportunities that me, my sister, and my brother have today. And it's been a real tough for me watching my friends, my family struggle throughout this uncertainty, because it's affected everybody out there in some way. And so, my parents always, when they had their little variety store in Rexdale, and I used to watch them during the busy days. I remember I would ask for a toy, and my dad and my mom one day told me, Stan, now's not the time for toys. Now is the time to put away some money, save for a rainy day. And certainly, like right after my dad had said that, maybe a few weeks later, we ended up getting robbed at that store, and then the basement flooded, and it had to be shut down for a month. And that's a lesson I remember from being 9 years old in Etobicoke, and that you do save for a rainy day. And so it's very important that our government did that, and we were doing that for 2 years leading up to this pandemic, and that's why we were able to react very quickly. Now, on March 25th, as you know, we were supposed to table our budget from the Ministry of Finance, and we ended up doing irresponsible based on sort of the new developments with the pandemic to table a number based on numbers that really weren't accurate anymore. So instead, we tabled a spring economic update, which sort of laid out our plan to deal with the pandemic directly. And there was $17 billion allocated towards the response to COVID-19. $10 billion of that went towards supporting small business and individuals with various deferrals and other energy cost-saving measures. And $7 billion of that went directly to support our frontline healthcare. It's $3 billion for hospital capacity, increased frontline care, service worker support, as well as increasing the budget for personal protective equipment. And that's in addition to the $1 billion in COVID contingency funds as well. And since then, of course, the budget has been pushed to November, when we will give a more multi-year sort of economic snapshot of our situation. But since then, we've turned the corner, and the Premier has certainly signaled that there are sunnier days on the horizon. And last month, he announced that framework. A framework which was not a calendar, but sort of a calendar of milestones, if you will, not dates, that said, as long as we hit these targets, this is how the economy is going to reopen. And certainly we are now at the stage where we are firmly in that second phase where businesses can start to reopen. And we, of course, I sit on the Jobs and Recovery Committee, which the goal of is to listen to the Chambers of Commerce, the small businesses out there, and take feedback on how businesses, and the key is to make sure that, yes, we're opening these businesses, but we have be able to handle that capacity as we reopen, and that we are ensuring that consumer confidence is there. And there's been some very interesting research done at the Ministry of Finance that shows that consumer confidence is not quite ready to sort of match that reopening of business. So this has to be a responsible sort of approach to that opening. I'm happy to answer some of the questions about the rent relief that's come up as well. And of course, the first day of tenants being able to apply for that commercial rent program was today. That's for commercial landlords with tenants, with 10 or more tenants. The applications for landlords will open tomorrow, and we'll be happy to answer those. Having said that, I know that we are at the time now where we can discuss those sunnier days, and I'm looking forward to getting feedback from everybody on this call and reconnecting with my old friend Brian, and happy to discuss the joint program as we move forward. Again, thanks for having me, Brian.
Oh, thank you so much. And guys, if we could if one of us doesn't have their line muted, so when you're not talking, if you can mute your lines. I'm not sure if that could even be on our back end. Listen, just not to make light of that, but MPP Cho, we have I have a 4-year-old at home. There's plenty of toys at our house. So when this is all done, you come over and you can have whatever toys you need. Now, I on my end, I can't see all the participants right now. Do we have? Can I get direction from our participant? Do we have MPing with us?
We do not yet.
Thank you. Okay, so MPP Cho, let me ask you a question to get going. The number one question we're being asked by our members. I'm paraphrasing, but I've seen this question probably 50 times already. Is how does my specific business reopen responsibly, well, following guidelines and following the law? How do I do that? Where do I get more information? We have shared the links that are provided through York Region, through the province. But maybe you could walk us through that, how a business should be thinking about that, where they can get some insights.
Yes, thank you, Brian. And it is the number one question I get calls about as well. And certainly people are looking for answers. And so those answers, first of all, I think everyone should understand that this is a very sort of liquid situation that's changing, not even daily, hourly. And so that information, I understand the frustration of locating it. There is the 1-888 number. That's 1-888-444 3569. I'm hoping that my staff can maybe put that in the chat box here for everybody, or you can Google that 188 number for the questions that relate to specific businesses. And that's the number you can call to find out if you're allowed to open, what sort of regulations, guidelines you're going to when you do reopen. Another way that you can get those answers is to connect with your local member of parliament or your local member of provincial and to ask questions, and we'll be able to get that for you. The Ministry of Finance has set up a sort of triage system within caucus for us to get those answers out very, very quickly. So those are the best ways to get your answers. And certainly if you want to send me your specific concerns from the, I'm happy to do that. Website, ontario.ca/COVID-19. And if you go to the business section, that's updated quite regularly with the sort of moving parts. To speak to that sort of maybe the difficulties in getting those answers, I know it's frustrating at times, but you know, I think the mayor will agree with me on this, that government in the past has not always moved very quickly or as quickly as the private sector would like. You know, the pandemic has challenged that, and all three government are working very well and very closely together to make sure that we get those answers. We break down the silos between jurisdictions and ministries, and we've been doing a good job at that. And so we're able to get those answers quicker, because really these are uncharted waters and people deserve those answers faster. And if you have any difficulties at all, Brian, through you, I'm happy to answer those questions directly.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, and I agree with you. If we could have your staff input that phone number in the chat, I think that'd be great. Thank you. Why don't we go over to Mayor Maurizio Bevilacqua from the City of Vaughan. Granted, the guidelines for reopening the economy slowly are being guided by the province, but what is the city's role in reopening and ensuring for the health and safety of citizens and businesses?
Well, first of all, we have an opinion on reopening. We obviously, one of the requirements is the reports from our medical officer of York Region. We take the health of our citizens to be paramount, and obviously we factor in the economic impact that COVID-19 has had on the population and on business and on employment, and parliamentary assistant would know the impact it's having on the deficit. Unemployment is rising. This is also a conversation that needs to be had, because at a time when every sector of the economy is requesting aid, it's also important to put it into context that one day somewhere is going to have to be paying for all this. And but I do think that the programs that have been introduced both by the federal and provincial governments have been responsible programs to inject the type of liquidity in the market that is required to absorb the economic shock that everyone is living through. We, of course, look at provincial guidelines as a city. We take their lead and follow their lead, I should say, in reference to rules, regulations, and laws that need to be applied. However, we do have our own opinion. For example, in the reopening of the parks recently, which is connected to reopening of the economy, we chose not to reopen because our numbers here in the City of Vaughan are still high. And after having analyzed in a very thorough way the statistics, the trends, I do not feel comfortable enough to even reopen the amenities within the parks. And why is that important? It's important because everything that you do throughout this crisis really comes down to one thing, and that is reducing the transmission of COVID-19. I like to look at, for example, and this is it's something that we've done throughout the process. You probably remember that we were monitoring COVID-19 as a city 6 weeks prior to the WHO declaring a global pandemic. We were the first city to declare a state of emergency. We're the first, one of the first cities, I should say, to close community centers, city hall, libraries, and so on and so forth, because I take a lot of time to study the issue of COVID-19. And there were, if one observes COVID-19 from a global and international perspective, there is a pattern. That's why I believe that a second wave will be coming in September, in the fall. And we need to be ready for that. But now we have the benefit of all the lessons that we've learned, right, for the first wave. But how do you know that a second wave is coming? Well, people that know, the scientists, the people in the medical field, actually state that to expect a second wave is very realistic. So what does that mean? Well, that means that there's going to be a reopening and then a shutting down again. What we have to find is a way to accept the reality that COVID-19 is here, and you're going to have to find a way to go around it because it's not going anywhere. It's here. And so how do you do that? Well, businesses have to implement new protocols. And I say businesses as well, and the private sector as well, because I'll tell you something, that government right now is really overwhelmed by COVID-19 because it's hitting governments from all sides. There are demands placed on governments today that were never placed, at least not in my generation or our generation, although I am a little bit older than both of you. And so what we need to do is to be very thoughtful about the manner in which we do the reopening. And I keep an eye on it. It's interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I was on CP24, and I said there would be a spike based on the fact that, after Victoria Day and after the park reopenings, it's natural to have a spike because there's greater human contact and human conversations and dialogue, and people are gathering. So what people have to factor in the reopening is that there will be a spike. It's natural because right now people are more apart than ever before. And when they gather once again, the fact that COVID-19 does exist within the population, you're actually going to have a spike. The point is this, though. Governments have to, and businesses have to accept one reality. It's not whether there's going to be more transmission or not, because there will be, and it's proven throughout these last few months. It's how much of it can you tolerate while going through a reopening? That is the question. And so we have to establish, as cooperatively with other levels of government, how we get through this and navigate through it. So now, there's all sorts of measures people are taking, whether they're wearing masks or gloves, and grocery stores are implementing new approaches for people to shop. But, as we learned from the Trinity Bellwoods example just recently in the city of Toronto, what happens is there comes a point in time when people just want to get out, right? They want to go out because they feel that they're inside too long. It's affecting them, psychologically as well as financially. So it comes a point where people may kind of not listen as much. The unfortunate reality of that is that when that happens, the problem gets exacerbated because the transmission flares up again. And so for us at the city, it's we've been very strict, and even though we've been strict, we still have high numbers. We have over 60 deaths in our city, over 800 cases, and so we take it seriously. So it's always, how do you balance between the health and the economic impact that this COVID-19 is having on our city and our province and essentially globally. So for us, it's just maintaining discipline and focus on it. And, I like to err on the side of caution. That's why I didn't open up the parks and the amenities in the parks, because I'd rather be safe than sorry. And what happened in Toronto obviously proves the fact that maybe some of the reopenings were too early.
Well, listen. I appreciate the sincerity there, and we also have with Trinity Bellwoods. So, I mean, look, I think it'd be irresponsible for me not to put that back to MPP Cho, to just say to you, like, what can the province do to ensure those kind of situations don't happen? Because there's no question the mayor is correct that there's an appetite for people to get out. People are all dealing with this in their own way and own challenges of trying to run a business and run a household. But obviously that we can't have that happen because it just exacerbates the problem, and we'll be looking at a second wave earlier than what we are hearing.
Absolutely, and the mayor brought up some very, very legitimate comments, and you got to look at those people at Trinity Bellwoods and think how selfish, how unfair that behavior is. I mean, everybody out there, the vast majority of Ontarians and Canadians are listening to the health experts and staying at home and social distancing, and here you have a bunch of people who I understand that there's that frustration. People want to get out there, but it's unfair to everybody else, especially the people in our vulnerable communities, to go ahead of the health professionals' medical advice, and that's a terrible example. And we need to move in that measured approach that the mayor talked about. And as we open, the key for the provincial government is also to make sure that our healthcare system is able to handle and has the capacity to handle those increases in numbers. Because the mayor is on. If we look to other jurisdictions ahead of the game here when it comes to the pandemic, you've seen spikes in those numbers, and that what's going to happen. You're going to see those spikes in numbers as we start to reopen different sectors. And the key here is not only to make sure that we have the personal protective equipment, that our frontline healthcare workers are supported, that we have the hospital capacity, but also that we have done a good job of separating those in our vulnerable communities, those who are more susceptible to the disease and death as a result of that disease. And so that is why we are moving in that measured approach. And I know it's caused some anxiety out there amongst our business community saying, the time is now, and pointing to other jurisdictions. But we have to look at the other jurisdictions that have moved in that measured approach and that have brought the curve down and have minimized the deaths as much as possible. So I agree very much with what the mayor said in our approach, and we will continue to move that way.
Thank you. I see we're joined by Minister Ng. So,
hi there.
Welcome.
I'm good.
Good. So we already explained to the audience that we know you had a cabinet meeting, so we appreciate that. Not an issue at all, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. So what we were talking about there was just how to reopen responsibly, given that business is trying to do the right thing, but also and follow the law and health guidelines, but there is some confusion. And then we got into a discussion there about Trinity Bellwoods. So what I'd like to do though is I want to reintroduce you, and then give you a few minutes to talk about what the federal government is doing right now to support business. There's a lot of programs. Then we're going to do a sort of back and forth between you and me, and we'll let our other speakers jump in as they want. So again, we have the Honourable Mary Ng, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. So I know you're in high demand these days because small business is really the lifeblood of the Canadian economy, and so many of them are struggling. And I did want to give a shout out as well to Render Media, our live webcasting partner that is behind the scenes. So welcome, Minister Ng. Can you talk about the programs? And I have a few questions for you afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian. It's great to be here with you, with Mayor Bevilacqua, with members of council who are there, and of course, with my provincial colleague, the parliamentary assistant for finance. Good to see you, MPP Cho. And I'm in Parliament is actually where I am. So if I run out of here, it'll be because I need to get back into my seat. So the mayor certainly understands this, having been in this place before, and the MPP as well. When your whip calls, you just move. So I will apologize in advance if that's what happens. But Brian, it's great to be here with you and with all of the businesses that are on here today and the entrepreneurs. And in the interest of time, I'm going to sort of speed through a lot of what we have done so that we can spend a lot of time in the conversation and the questions which I know businesses have. But right from the very beginning of this, we knew that what we had to do was stand up very quickly to help Canadians. This is a global pandemic. We needed to make sure that Canadians stayed safe, and that the measures that we were putting out there was going to help Canadians be Team Canada. We need Canadians more than ever to stay at home, to do physical distancing, and to flatten this curve so that our healthcare professionals, our frontline workers have every able fighting chance to help all of us through this. And of course, those that have taken a really enormous hit are our Canadian businesses, in particular the small businesses who typically really work so hard to contribute to our national economy, but also our economies in our local communities. Here's what I heard in sort of the pain points, if you will, for businesses. They needed some help to keep their staff together with their companies as employers, because we know that if the employer and the employees stay together, their road to recovery is going to be one that is a stronger one. So the other thing too is it's actually worrying about Canadians and workers, making sure that they have that predictability of being employed in the in the company and in the business that they really are proud to be a part of. So helping Canadians with wage support, employers with wage support, which is why we introduced the 75% wage subsidy. The other thing we heard loud and clear was businesses needed help to deal with the operating expenses that they have every single month. So these are utilities, it's insurance, it's the top up, that 25% top up of the wage salary, it's rent, it's a whole host of just non-deferrable expenses that businesses have every single month. So this is where we introduced the small business loan for it's $40,000 for small businesses. 10,000 of that is forgivable if you're able to pay it back by the end of 2022. And there has been enormous take up on that. 630,000 businesses to date have got that loan. And we have had a 99% approval rate by the banks putting these loans out. So I know it's getting out there, helping these small businesses manage their costs during this period. Of course, more needs to be done, and we're going to keep working on that. There are other lending supports as well for businesses that are the larger small businesses or the medium-sized businesses. So loans, again, available through the financial institutions, because we want to make sure this money got out to businesses easily and quickly. So banks and credit unions are, of course, the vehicles to do that because they exist in every community, certainly in Vaughan, certainly in York Region. I mean, Markham Thornhill, where I'm from, and making sure that that gets out. So those lending products go up to $12.5 million for businesses. So lending support, liquidity. So I hear that loud and clear in terms of what is needed. And then the other thing related to operating expenses and how we help businesses with that, it's commercial rent support. Of course, we collaborated with the provinces on this and with the territories because it's an area, of course, that is provincial, under provincial responsibility, but we both agree. We all agree that it's our collective job to help businesses. So we work together. So this is a 75% rent reduction, commercial rent reduction for businesses going through the landlords. They will get a 50% forgivable loan if they pass that reduction on to their tenants. I encourage very strongly landlords to take this. I know the Premier of Ontario has talked about this. We certainly are appealing to landlords because it actually makes good financial sense for you. You certainly don't want businesses to be so ridden that they can't survive during this period. And if they declare bankruptcy, then you're not going to see that revenue either. So we're going to appeal to landlords. And of course, I'm appealing to my provincial colleagues to use other tools that they've got at their disposal. But we really are hoping, we're appealing to landlords to do this so that all of our small businesses can be helped. And then I guess finally, we wanted to make sure we help businesses keep their costs low. So deferring tax payments like HST, GST, customs duties payments. Just to give you an order of magnitude about how that's helping, it's helping 3.2 million businesses. It's equivalent to a $30 billion interest-free loan for businesses just by doing deferral. And of course, I know that there are high-tech businesses, high-growth businesses, women entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, and businesses that are in the rural communities, of course, which York Region has both a mix of rural and urban. So there are a range of supports that are there to help those businesses as well. But all of this is to make sure that we are helping businesses weather through this difficult period so that they have the greatest chance of getting on that road to restart. And as the MPP said, it is going to be, we need to take a measured approach to this because nothing is more important to us than the health and safety of our people. And while we balance the health of people, we also must make sure that we are assisting businesses along the way so that they have the best chance at restart, which is why we've we've put out these supports by the federal government. So maybe I'll just stop there. And my final word is, it's incredible to see the resilience and just what businesses are doing to stand up during this period. And it's incredibly optimistic there because we are Team Canada. And I've seen the very best of our businesses. And I just want to thank you because I know how hard it's been. And we're going to keep working at this together. And you certainly have my commitment to keep doing that. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Minister, and you're very well spoken, and I appreciate the talking fast to cover a lot of topics. I wanted to start off just with a really practical question. I'm going to give the first part of the answer, and you can help me.
Yeah.
We have a small nonprofit that's watching this, and they've asked about the $40,000 CEBA loan. Now, my understanding is based on gross payroll, which I think was $20,000 to $1.5 million. I think the latest iteration, and they said, who can I speak to about it? And my answer would be call your local bank. But maybe you have a better answer, or is there a particular phone number they could call if they specifically, their board wants to ask questions?
Yeah, you know what? You can certainly talk to your bank. I mean, that is where the vehicle for getting this loan out to people. But if you send me an email at mary.ng@parle.gc.ca, we'll get an answer out to you too. I mean, particularly if it's a specific situation. And I also want to say that we expanded the criteria for the small business loan. I mean, what we have been doing, because we put these programs out so quickly in response to just helping people, all Canadians, that we've also had to make adjustments along the way. And we've done that because we've listened to businesses and we've listened to Canadians. So those businesses, that's the sole proprietor, for example, businesses that are using contractors and don't necessarily have payroll registered the way that we had originally defined it. Those family-owned businesses that pay payroll through dividends, as an example. Like, what we're looking for are businesses that actually have non-deferrable expenses to which they need this loan for. You're covering operating expenses, those non-deferrable expenses, and you filed a tax return. So, get in touch with my office. We're happy to take, we're happy to help in any way and give you, and to give you the answers that you need.
Thank you. And I wanted to get into the big topic we were hearing about. Right now, the two biggest topics we're hearing about, one has to do with how do I reopen responsible? The other one has to do with the rental assistance. So we very much appreciate the program. You already touched on what the issue is, that very few landlords have actually opted into the program. And clearly for this to work and for the economy to thrive in that way, we want landlords and tenants at the table having a reasonable discussion. Actually, on a previous segment, the mayor even was very gracious. He talked about how he thinks that conversation should sound. So my question to you as our federal counterpart here is, are you looking at changes to the program to ensure more landlords take part, or are there other things the federal government, provincial government can do to ensure that these conversations are happening so the program gets to support the businesses that need it?
Well, the program opened up yesterday to some parts of the country, British Columbia, Alberta, and Quebec, and one of the territories, I think. And the applications opened in Ontario today. So we're going to look at that very carefully. You've heard me and the provincial leaders, in the Premier, and indeed all of us saying the same thing, which is we have worked together so that we can provide this support to our small businesses. And a lot of those landlords we know are also those businesses. And this is really intended to help the landlords so that they can get the financial assistance in rent. Because for those tenants who right now rent from them, if they are seeing a 70% plus reduction in revenue, you can imagine that it's going to be pretty tough for them to pay rent, which is why we put this program together. So we want the tenants, of course, to get the benefit of this, and we want the landlords, and they're going to start seeing money flow as early as next week. I mean, so this is this is designed so that we can really make sure that landlords are getting that support so that they can pass it along to the small business tenant. You've seen us, continue to do this work. And I know that my provincial colleagues are also going to be looking at this very carefully as well. And because I think we all want these businesses to be helped during this difficult time. It's why we've collaborated. And I know that the provinces will exercise what they need to, complementary measures that they have in their toolbox. As an example, the Atlantic provinces have implemented commercial rent freezes for those in those provinces. But we respect the work that we do with our provincial colleagues, and we're going to keep doing this work. But Ontario applications open today. We're going to take a careful look at this, but to the landlords who are here listening, it is in your financial interest as well to help our small businesses. We want the Canadian economy to get back on a restart, and the many measures that are here are to help our small businesses do that. And we're in this together as Team Canada. So let's just be Team Canada and do everything we can, because that's what it's going to take to not only beat COVID-19, but to get us on that road to restart.
Yeah, thank you. Now, given your other profile, I wanted to ask you about exports and how you think COVID-19 will have a long-term impact on the import-export market. And then for that one, if MPP Cho or the mayor would like to speak that as well, we'll turn to them after you.
Yes, of course, Brian. So during this time, throughout all of COVID-19, wearing my international trade minister hat, I have been working with partner countries. I've had 2 G20 trade ministers meetings. I have had many bilateral meetings with a number of trading partners. And of course, this follows on our leaders, the leader of the country, so the Prime Minister, and meeting with his G20, G7 counterparts to ensure that during this time, we are keeping those supply chains, those global supply chains open, so that critical and essential goods like medication, like supplies, essential supplies like agri-food products, agri-food products, so that we can not only feed Canada, but indeed the rest of the world, that those supply chains remain open. It's really important that we continue to advocate for that. We know that some countries have put up barriers to trade during this time in an effort to deal with COVID-19. So I've been working with the World Trade Organization to make sure that Canada's leadership and our voice continues to be there to ensure that global supply chains remain open, certainly around essential supplies and personnel. And we're going to have to keep doing that work because Canada is a trading country. We have access to so many customers through our various trade agreements around the world, and it's our job to make sure that that free flow continues, and that to the extent that there are barriers that have been put up, that they are temporary, they are transparent, and that they are that we quickly work together to bring them down. Trade is going to be really important as we restart the Canadian economy and make sure that we have access to those markets. So I will continue to do that work on behalf of Canadian and Canadian businesses. We have been, and we will continue to do that.
Okay, thank you. And the twin question to that, so I'll put it out to the group, is do we expect to see certain aspects of our supply chain come back to Canada? So I'm thinking specifically about the healthcare and medical products, but there could be others as well. So I'll put these 2 questions out to the group. MPP Cho, did you want to take a shot at that? Or?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Brian, and it's nice to see you again, Minister, albeit this way. I think I saw you last year was the last time, but looking forward to seeing you again in person, certainly. But the Minister actually brought up quite a few very important points. So I'll sort of start with supply chain, and then I do want to touch on the commercial rent program briefly as well. The supply chain is something that's near and dear to my heart, because at my former role at Treasury Board, we were in the process of trying to modernize and make more efficient the supply chain here in Ontario when it comes to procurement in government. And I think at all levels of government, procurement has been faced with some challenges. And this pandemic, sometimes out of chaos comes some clarity. It's really challenged the way governments look at our supply chain. And certainly I think the Minister and the Mayor would agree that, in history, government doesn't always move as efficiently or as quickly as people would like. And that's forced us to change that, because let's take personal protective equipment, for example. This is a global pandemic. That means the demand for PPE is all around the world, and that's forced us to really look at how we are procuring procuring goods and existing? Are we the most competitive? Are we reacting quickly enough? Are we focusing enough on made in Ontario, made in Canada? And that's really led to some better outcomes because we've had to move quickly to protect the people that we serve. And so this has actually led to a lot of changes when it comes to our supply chain in Ontario. And I know the Minister of Government and Consumer Services has been hard at work at making sure that some of these changes are. So as we move forward, I look forward to more efficiency in that sector and making sure that, and as the mayor mentioned earlier, as the numbers spike, as we reopen the businesses, there is no excuse. Our supply chain has to be ready to handle the increased capacity needs that we're going to have. And I look forward to working with the mayor as well as the minister and all levels of government to make sure that we're doing this together. And you know, I want to commend the mayor and the minister for the hard work that she mentioned earlier. The sheer volume of tasks coming to government at all levels has been incredible. And really, there's been a great collaboration between all levels, and that includes the commercial rent program. And there's 2 points I want to make to that. The province, obviously, it's been, I think, 7 weeks since the program was announced, and we've been fielding a lot of questions from small businesses. And the program sort of eligibility, criteria, the program itself has changed in those 7 weeks. And understandably so, because it's, of course, varied sectors and businesses, and the volume of work that I referenced earlier has meant that the program is going to be somewhat malleable. And so today, we have the first time in Ontario that landlords are able to apply, and the province is to react. And there's 2 ways that we're handling to make sure that we have the highest uptake that's possible. You know, for myself, I've been calling businesses because businesses out there don't have a lot of clarity. Some people don't know this program exists. Other businesses or landlords rather have a misconception about what this program is. And what we're trying to communicate at that granular level, business by business, landlord by landlord, is that, hey guys, we're together. We need to make sure that this works because the economic sort of landscape as we move forward is going to be quite uncertain. And 75% is certainly a heck of a lot better than 0. And for the foreseeable future, we don't know when that consumer confidence continues. So that's the granular message. That's point 1. The second point, which the minister referenced or alluded to, was the fact that the premier acknowledges that we have to see what the uptake on this program is and be ready to react with pressures if necessary. Now, all the business owners and landlords on this call will understand that the private sector business is very complex, and even within the same business, you could have differences between regions. You know, lease contracts are very complex, and there's all sorts of legal issues that come with blanket sort of protection, because one size doesn't fit all when it comes to businesses out there. And so the Premier and Minister Clark understand.
Actually,
and to do with the Ministry of Finance is carefully. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to interrupt. I received note. I know that the minister has to leave shortly. So if it's okay, just for a moment, I'm going to jump back to, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Just Minister Ng, just before you go, the one other question we wanted to get to you, and you can answer it quickly, is there's been a lot of, and MPP Cho has also referenced it, there have been a lot of federal support programs from rent relief to everything, the wage subsidy, the support for contractors. Most of these end in between June and August. Do you have plans to extend some of these programs beyond, or is it a wait and see?
Well, we continue to work with businesses because throughout this entire period, I'll just give you kind of what we're doing in terms of working with businesses. My department takes a daily call. I mean, today it may not be as daily as it was at the very beginning, but certainly a daily call. And there were like 1,000 people 1,000 businesses, including organizations like the Chambers, who are on those calls to talk to us so that we can get the input, we could sort of share, and it was sort of a 2-way dialogue. That work won't stop. It's going to absolutely continue. We're working with the National Chamber and what they've created is a Canadian Business Resilience Network so that we can actually have the voice of business with us so that we are looking at the kind of work and supports that we're going to continue to need to provide to businesses. Of course, the wage subsidy is extended until August the 31st, and that's really important because you heard me talk about how important it is to keep businesses together with their workforce. That is really important, particularly in the restart. And we're going to keep working together, and we're going to look at this. We also introduced yesterday the Business Resilience Service. It's a hotline. It's in collaboration with the National Chamber, but also the Canadian Professional Professional Accountants Association, so the CPAs, and it's a hotline where there are professionals on there who for small vulnerable businesses would normally not get access to. So these different avenues of inputs into us is really valuable, because not only is it to help the businesses sort of navigate through this period or get the advice, et cetera, that they need, but they are going to be talking to us so that we can make sure we keep doing the work, supporting businesses. So I would say the work isn't over. We are heading into a restart. It varies different parts of the country because COVID-19 is experienced differently. So it's natural that you're going to see paces be different in different parts of the country. But what is absolutely consistent is that top priority is making sure that health Canadians is top, and equally important is making sure that our businesses are supported so that the economy starts to take, so that people and businesses who want to and need to and can contribute will do so. And we're going to do that in a measured way, of course, always working with our provincial counterparts and with businesses at the very center of it.
Okay, we appreciate your time, so we'll let you go at this point. I'm going to come back to MPP Cho. Sorry for cutting you off.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Minister.
I wish I could be there a little longer, but I apologize for this. But very, very good to see you all, and I hope to see you again soon. And virtually is wonderful, but maybe down the road, if we can all kick this thing, we'll be back together again personally. So thanks so much.
We're all looking forward to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Yeah, no problem at all, Brian. It's I was finishing up there anyway. I just wanted to tell everybody on the call that, as the Premier said, when it comes to commercial sort of rent relief reaction, once we see the uptake, if enough landlords aren't participating, the Premier said it, everything is on the table. And so we're hoping that the calls, the sort of that collaborative effort resonates well with landlords out there, because it really is in their best interest to participate in this program. And we're encouraging all members from all levels of government, all elected officials, to work together to make sure that we are able to do that. Here's an example of a letter I sent to my businesses in Willowdale, signed by Ali Assassi, my local councillor Fillion, and myself, that said, hey, it's time to work together on this, elected officials included, businesses included. So we're hoping that resonates well. But again, if the uptake is abysmally low, there will be backstops from the province.
Good. Okay, there might be a further conversation on that. So let's hope for the best. I want to turn it over to the mayor. So you've heard us talk about supply chain, import-export market, maybe bringing back certain aspects of healthcare supply to the province, maybe to Vaughan. We've also talked a lot about the rental assistance program. So I just put it over to you. Did you want to comment on any of this?
Yes, sure. I think, Brian, at the end of the day, look, right now governments are exercising a role that is important during a crisis. Basically, manage this crisis. We also have to recognize that at one point in time, there will be a time where the market forces will also intervene, when there is stabilization of the market. People have to understand that these are temporary measures that will last as long as COVID-19 is around. Some of the programs will stay because we'll find it be efficient and effective. But generally speaking, government's role is to be there to really alleviate some of the financial, personal stresses that COVID-19 has placed on our country. In reference to supply chain and some of the industries, what I will say is that we need to look at what is in the national interest. So, whether it's medical supplies and also, food supply. People aren't talking too much about that. But now food supply is also going to become more of an issue as well, because now that when a country is under attack, what are the basic things? You want good health, you want food, you want a strong economy, right? That's basically what people demand of leadership. I do want to say, though, that the conversation will have to be broadened. There will be a day, when the provincial government will have to announce its deficit numbers, and There'll be a day when the federal government will have to announce its deficit numbers and debt numbers, and it will be a wake-up call for many people, because as these programs and these expenditures take place, and rightly so during this period of time, there has to be an expectation that obviously this can't go on forever, because the burn rate of funding at the provincial and federal government is very high at this point in time. So I endorse 100% giving the relief that exists now in various sectors. Just on Sunday afternoon, I had a conversation with a group of people that own banquet halls in the city of Vaughan. As you know, city of Vaughan is probably the world capital of banquet halls, and it's not a matter of them not being good business people. It's just that there's no market now because you can't hold functions. And I relayed that message actually the same day to the premier, to basically say, what kind of help can we supply to them? And basically, a lot of people, what they're looking for is, for lack of better words, bridge financing to put them through, right up to probably January 2021 after the second wave. And then I think the full reopening will occur thereafter. And so what has become very evident is that government's role, COVID-19 has also changed its role in many ways. And so as we look forward, what are our expectations? What do people actually expect for government? Because that's a conversation that needs to be had, because as government invests a lot, and I call it an investment, and invest a lot in people and businesses, and that's not how our system works in the long term. Our system is a market-driven system with government intervention when and if required. And so we have to have that conversation as well, because one of the things that I do that has served me exceptionally well in 30 years of public life is that I have this concept called bring the future to the present. And that forces me to think of future conditions and how and what kind of scenarios we have to and tools that we have to address future trends and what the reality is going to be. And you always have to keep an eye out. And you also have to make sure that people, that we collectively as people are very realistic about what government can and what government cannot do. I tend to bet a lot on people. Prior to COVID-19, as you well know, we had an unemployment rate of 4.2%, an economic growth rate of 4%, which one of the best in North America. And the DNA of the 12,000 businesses in our city that create over 225,000 jobs still exists after post-COVID. It's not like those characteristics, the resiliency of people and that changes. That doesn't change. That's still going to be there. These are the same people that delivered those numbers for us before COVID-19. And, it'll take a little bit of time to ramp it up again. But I'll give you an example. In the city of Vaughan, when you look at the quarter of 2017, 2018, and 2019, and you compare it to 2020, when it comes to, let's say, just to give you an example, permits, right? Building permits. Well, we're up 70%. So what that tells me is that there's a lot of confidence in the strength of the economy here in the city of Vaughan. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting all those investments. People still believe that the province of Ontario, our country, my city, it still provides a viable financial plan. In other words, people still believe that they can come to the city of Vaughan, where 105 different languages are spoken, where we have CNCP intermodal, where we're 400 series highways, where we have a very high-skilled population. They can come here and still make a go of it. And that's what I'm betting on. I'm betting on people's ability to make a comeback, because history teaches us that. When you went through the Great Depression, practically no social programs back in the day. People still built a future for themselves. And I think what we need to do is also inspire people to understand that, desolation is always followed by consolation. So you can't be hopeless. You've got to be hopeful. And I do believe that the psychology of the marketplace and the psychology of the population is extremely important. We don't talk a lot about that. We don't talk about the indomitable spirit that people have. We don't talk too much about the incredible capacity that humanity has to bounce back from adversity. But this is a big part of, and it's going to be a big factor in whether our recovery is going to be a slow recovery or a speeded up recovery. It's going to be a point in time where we've identified and this is the story of COVID-19. Government's role has been defined, the private sector's role has been defined, but we have to also start talking about personal initiative, personal responsibility, and what we as individuals, what are we willing to do to bring about positive change to the economy? And that to me is fundamental. Unfortunately, we don't spend a lot of time talking about that because I think a lot of it is just part of your inner core, but it needs to be expressed because people need to be motivated, and motivation will only get you one place, but then discipline will take you to wherever you got to go. And I do think that knowing my community as well as I do, I think we will bounce back. We have to be realistic, but there's no question about the way that I believe that we are going to bounce back.
It's funny. You and I often refer to Vaughan as one of Canada's fastest growing cities, and right now I've taken to referring to Vaughan as one of Canada's most resilient cities. I firmly believe what you've just said, that Vaughan and Ontario will bounce back, and I think that to some of the points that you've all made earlier, many businesses right now are looking for a way to get through this, and they do see a light at the end of the tunnel. So you referenced that group, and they're looking for bridge financing, and hospitality, tourism is one of the hardest hit sectors, and they're looking for a way to get through. And so I want to turn this question over to MPP Cho, because you are the parliamentary assistant to the Ministry of Finance, and you're taking on to help business get to that later stage. You're taking on a lot of deficit, a greater deficit, and ultimately a larger debt. So my question is, given your role there, where do you see us emerging as the Ontario government? And as a twinned question, there have been questions about the support that you've been able to provide with off-peak electricity pricing, another measure to support business right now. Can we expect that program to be extended for a while?
Well, thanks, Brian. And, let me start with that question. Right now, the $10 billion that we announced in the budget dedicated to people in small business, that will be sort of re-examined in 15th of 2020, and that out our moment. And to the mayor's point, the deficit is going to be ugly, for lack of a better word, but this is the time to spend. There's absolutely no choice when it comes to the health and safety of the people that you govern. So that's that lesson, that rainy day I spoke of earlier. You got to make sure we're saving for that, and thank goodness we were. So we'll be able to react, and there's everything's on the table, as I said. That includes with our municipal partners. We understand that deficits are going to be huge, but revenue's down. It's a double whammy here, and that's not just here in Ontario and in Canada. This is global. And it has brought the global economy to its knees, and it's going to take some heavy lifting to get out of this. But the people of Vaughan are a great example. Not only are they resilient, they're creative, and they understand that, as the mayor has said, that there is normal, a changing crisis can come that opportunity, and we look to the business leaders that are on this call to do that and to adapt quickly, and the government will be there to support every step of the way. That's the whole point of the Jobs and Recovery Committee, to make sure that we're helping that resiliency, helping that creativity, and that true Ontario spirit that we know is going to shine through will be stronger for this years down the road.
And thank you for that. And actually, for on my end, I don't know for others, on my end, the first part of your answer got cut off. So can I ask you again about the hydro off-peak pricing?
Sure. Oh, okay. So let me just repeat that.
I got everything else. I don't know if the viewers at home have it. It could be my internet, so who knows?
Yeah. So
technology is great when it works, right?
In my case, it'll be 20 billion because you said 10 twice.
Well, maybe I'll just talk to you then, Brian. On March 25th, there was the 10 billion portion of sort of the tax deferrals as well as energy reduction measures. That was for individuals and small businesses. We're re-examining that on November 15th of 2020 when we table our multi-year budget, because the budget is a multi-year picture as we return to that balance. And so everything is on the table was that first point, and that includes, with our municipal partners. And so we're looking forward to communicating with the mayor as well as the VCC to make sure that we have your ideas on where people need the help the most as we move into that sunnier days, which are imminent.
Okay, thanks. I got it this time. Thank you.
Okay, great.
No, but it's like, it's so true during COVID, or anytime. Technology is great when it works. And you can never figure out whose internet is the problem, but I want to make sure our viewers can see it. I want to go back to the mayor. We're getting close to our time. Just put it to you, are there other measures that the city plans to take to just broadly help business reopen in a safe and respectful way, guided by the province, whether that's now or a few months' time?
Well, Brian, I'm just flipping through here a list of things that you probably remember early on. We changed our bylaws to facilitate restocking of store shelves and enhancing of movements of goods and everything else. We suspended, and you were part and parcel of the decision to suspend the municipal accommodation tax. We also introduced a program, Shop Vaughan Local, Open for Business program, Digital Boost, vaughanbusiness.ca. We have a portal that basically, people can get on as they reopen, so that the entire community understands which stores have in fact reopened. We obviously, our economic development department is working also in cooperation with you. We've dealt with almost 1,000 businesses in our area, guiding them through the various programs, letting them know what the city is offering. It's a very thorough job has been done by the city and obviously by our team. And I'd like to give them a shout out because the satisfaction rate that has been expressed to me personally is very, very high. So this is, at the end of the day, we continue to partner with the various levels of government. I continue to, of course, continue my conversations with the two levels of government. I got to tell you something that I've seen both levels of government being extremely accessible. They responded to the crisis to the best of their abilities, which I think is the only thing that you can ask for. They've made, I think, very wise investments in the economy, with people, with individuals, with businesses. So overall, it's been a multi-pronged approach towards making sure that most of the needs and requirements of the population were being met. Now, it wasn't easy because you've got to remember that a lot of these programs didn't exist prior to COVID-19, and they had to be created, they had to be administered, they had to be, you had to get money out the door. Think about the multitude of programs that today exist that weren't around before COVID-19. So the government response has been good. And I also think that the most effective way for governments to react to such a crisis has been through partnership. And there hasn't been finger pointing, which is great to see. Our focus has been on making sure that we achieve a positive end, which is letting people get through this difficult period in a manner that is becoming of an enlightened, industrialized country that knows that the role of government is to be there in time of need and to maintain the foundation. Right now, the foundation would have been, if governments did not intervene, the foundation would have shattered, really. You can't have us, you could not have had the type of talk about a recovery today had it not been for the investments that governments would have made. Because one thing about business, imagine if that responsibility was only given to the private sector. Well, there's no form of centralization in the private sector, right? So the only real institution that could have responded as quickly would have been government. And so government actually did a good job in that sense. And where the private sector has been very helpful is in telling us exactly what the specific needs were so that we could address those needs. And but I do want to say that at the end of the day, I bet on people all the time because ultimately that's where the answers lie. There's a lot of wisdom, and we have, and history has taught us so much about how to get through a crisis. I mean, look, you had people that were making wine one day, making hand sanitizer the next, right? Mm-hmm. You had people that car manufacturers that now are making ventilators. I mean, this tells you the flexibility of the business community and how quickly they can adapt. But are we surprised by that? There was a world, and I'm not comparing the two. I'm comparing the two just for historical context. There was a world pre-internet, right? And then we all adjusted to that new reality. And there was a world pre-COVID, and there'll be a world after the post-COVID, and we'll adjust just as well because we have that ability as people, and our systems always find a way to adjust to new realities, and that's why I'm very confident that we'll come out of this. We'll emerge stronger.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both. I think you both provided a lot of hope and leadership. MPP Cho, one of the comments we're going to remember is what you said, and many of your counterparts have said it, that it really all options are on the table to support business. That's welcome news to the community, and we'll continue to convey concerns and requests for support and positive things that are happening to your level of government as to yours, Mr. Mayor, and the federal government. So on behalf of MP Mary Ng and myself, and I wanted to thank you both, Mayor Bevilacqua and MPP Cho, for joining us today. I want to wish you both to stay safe and healthy, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon. And for our viewers, just a reminder that tomorrow we have an interview between myself and the Deputy Chief Economist of Scotiabank, Brett House. So you should tune in for that. We'll be talking a lot more about the economy and the future direction of Canada from that perspective. And MP Sabar will be joining us as well, which is great, given his background in banking. So we'll look forward to seeing you again soon, and wish you both a great day. Thanks so much.
Stay safe, everybody.